Good morning, and the passage I'm reading and reflecting on this morning is from John chapter 18, verses 12 to 27, and it takes us into a very charged scene, the arrest of Jesus. Then the Roman soldiers with their commanding officer and the Jewish guards arrested Jesus, bound him, and took him first to Annas. He was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jewish authorities that it was better that one man should die for all the people. Simon Peter and another disciple followed Jesus. That other disciple was well known to the high priest, so he went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest's house, while Peter stayed outside by the gate. Then the other disciple went back out, spoke to the girl at the gate, and brought Peter inside. The girl at the gate said to Peter, "Aren't you also one of the disciples of that man?" "No, I am not," said Peter. It was cold, so the servants and guards had built a charcoal fire and were standing round it, warming themselves. So Peter went over and stood with them, warming himself. The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus answered, "I have always spoken publicly to everyone. All my teaching was done in the synagogues and in the temple, where all the people come together. I have never said anything in secret. Why then do you question me? Question the people who heard me. Ask them what I told them. They know what I said." When Jesus said this, one of the guards slapped him and said, "How dare you talk like that to the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If I have said anything wrong, tell everyone here what it was. But if I am right in what I've said, why do you hit me?" Then Annas sent him still bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Peter was still standing there, keeping himself warm. So the others said to him, "Aren't you also one of the disciples of that man?" But Peter denied it. "No, I am not," he said. One of the high priest's slaves, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, spoke up. "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" he asked. Again Peter said, "No." And at once a cock crowed. Now that passage, of course, has got so much significance, hasn't it? So much meaning and portent in it that we could reflect forever. But the thing that I particularly wanted to draw out of it as I was reading it was to do with Peter himself. Because, if we think about Peter, originally Simon, then Simon Peter, Jesus added that name, thinking of Peter as a rock and a foundation of the church. Peter's life is really quite interesting. And in this passage, of course, you could say it's not really Peter's finest hour. Unfortunately, he's fulfilled entirely the prophecy of Jesus that he would deny Jesus 3 times. Something that he refuted. He couldn't conceive that would happen. And throughout this whole episode, just prior to this passage as well, about the arrest of Jesus, Peter behaves quite, maybe slightly erratically. He strikes out at somebody with his sword, cutting off his ear. And he's rebuked by Jesus for that. So I suppose he wasn't really on message, was he, doing that? And then in this passage, I suppose he doesn't come out of it that well, does he? Because he chooses not, to deny his association with Jesus 3 times. And he almost sort of starts to pal up standing around the fire with those others. So why did he do that? Was he worried about, if he was associated with Jesus, he might be in danger himself? Obviously a pretty hazardous predicament that they're in, isn't it? With Jesus being arrested. And it leads me to think how people become defined by something in their lives. Because maybe, I don't know, maybe what most people might remember about Peter is that he denies Jesus 3 times. And but of course, Peter's life went on, and he became really after Jesus' death, um, a almost disciple in chief, really, and a really significant figure then in what happened thereafter. And when Jesus reappears to the disciples, of course, he declares his love for Jesus 3 times, almost corresponding to the three denials that he makes in this passage. And ultimately, Peter loses his own life for his faith. Some ancient scholars recount him being crucified in an inverted position because he didn't think he was worthy to die in the same way that Jesus had. So when we do define people almost by something that happens, particularly when it's not maybe their finest hour, because we all we have those spells in our lives, those episodes that we'd rather not be defined by. Really, we might prefer to think of other things and to be remembered for other things. But in this powerful, dramatic passage, the part that Peter plays in it is something certainly that is associated with him, but his role thereafter in the development of the Christian church was highly, highly significant. And we should remember, when we're thinking about people, the whole big picture, even if there are aspects of their lives or episodes in their lives that don't reflect that well on them. So there we are, Peter.